You're welcome to stand or sit, whatever you feel comfortable, and come worship God with us this morning.
You see my victory.
You restore every heart that is broken. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. You give life, you are love, you bring light to the darkness, you give hope, you restore every heart that is broken. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath
the cross. For even in your suffering, you saw to the other side, knowing this was our salvation. Jesus, for our sake you died. Praise the Father, praise the Son, praise the Spirit, three in one. God of glory, majesty, praise forever to the King of kings. And the morning that you rose, all of heaven held its breath, till that stone was moved for good, for the Lamb had conquered death. And the dead rose from their tombs, and the angels stood in awe, for the souls of all who'd come to the Father are restored. And the church of Christ was born, and the Spirit lit the flame. Praise the Father, praise the Son, praise the Spirit, three in one. God of glory, majesty, praise forever to the King of kings. Praise the Father, praise the Son, praise the Spirit, three in one. God of glory, majesty, praise forever to the King of kings. Praise forever to the King of kings.
Making sure we have the right one. We're good. Good morning, everybody. I feel like 2 weeks ago I was up here saying how spring-like it felt, and now I'm kind of regretting that. So, but welcome and good morning. We're so glad you guys are here today. If you are new, we just want to extend a special welcome to you. And if you are, please feel free to come out to our info desk in the cafe after the service today. We have a little treat that we'd like to give you just to show you our gratitude for you being here and just to hopefully make you feel even more welcome. So just see myself or Ryan or even Amber after the service, and we'll get that for you. Fill out a little connection card so we can get to know you better and just learn a little bit more about your story. Tonight, pretty excited. I don't have a ton of announcements, but today is important. We would love for you to be here because tonight is the town hall meeting that we've been working really hard to plan for everybody just to get together. It's at 5 o'clock tonight, right here. We just want to be able to share some thoughts, visions, gather feedback, and just share
just some ideas and brainstorming as we head into 2025. So please, 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 if you can, we would love for you to be here. We are asking everybody just to bring a little snack to share, just so we can continue to gather in community. So again, 5 o'clock tonight. And one thing about that is we were excited that there's some really great opportunities for us to kind of change some platforms. I don't know if you've seen like the new website, which has been really cool to be able to develop. And one of the things with that is we are changing like our giving platform. So if you do give online, we appreciate that, but we are going to have to kind of change that or get you kind of reset up. So if you do give online, we very much appreciate that, but we just ask that you bring like a check stub or some sort of information, and we will confidentially get that reset up for you. And if you don't give online and you would like to, this is a great opportunity just to kind of go through the steps to get that set up. But that is just one thing that we just ask that you bring with you tonight if you are interested in doing so. If you gave some snacks and drinks and things like that to the Apache Elementary for their parent-teacher conferences, we just are so appreciative of your willingness to give to that community. I know that the teachers and staff at the school felt really blessed that week, and I was just so excited that we were able to provide some additional things to look forward to during a very long week for them. But along those lines, we are really excited just to continue that relationship with Apache. So there are some opportunities, if you are interested, to continue that relationship through various volunteer opportunities at the school. There's some information at the info desk that if you'd like to gather, go out there after the service and take a look. There are a couple opportunities during the day helping students with different math, reading, mentorship, stuff like that. But we really want to be able to not just make it a one and done. We want to continue the relationship within the community and with the school. So if you're interested, feel free to check that out. And if you consider yourself a regular attender of the Light KC, we would very much encourage you to just continue to give back with your tithes and your offerings. So if you want to do that, there are giving boxes in the back or again online, and we can show you how to amend that tonight at the town hall. And then the last thing is, if you are able, please stand, and we would love just for you to find somebody you have not said hello to yet this morning and greet each other as we prepare our hearts for the message.
Well, good morning, church. How are you? Sorry, I can't have the big thing. Feel I feel extra small. That's all right. Just wanted to say welcome to everybody. It's so glad to be back here with you after a huge weekend of Valentine's Day and everything. So glad to be here with all of you. Special welcome to everybody online. Thank you for joining us. We hope to see you here in the coming weeks. And special, again, welcome to anybody who's new. Thank you for choosing to be with us. So I want to start with a question that Andrea and I have wrestled with through the entirety of our marriage. And she's not here, so she must have known that this was coming. The question is, how much is enough? How much is enough? Now, I'm talking about how much is enough earning, how much is enough saving, how much is enough spending. Yeah, today, as we continue our series in James, this is the section that he talks about money. That's why I have the green shirt on. Trying to align everything. So I want to start off light because obviously money's never fun. So this is the first financial lesson that I ever received in life. This is a 1-minute clip. Let's watch knowledge from the
And what do you plan to do?
We want you to save it for us so we can be rich like you.
Well, saving is the first important step, no doubt. But money is something you should learn more about. I'm not the richest duck in the world today because I just salted my money away. And that's how I became rich, making the little slices grow. Money shouldn't be idle and must be put to work, you know.
Oh, yeah? How about all that idle dough you got stashed away?
Oh, no, lads. This is just petty cash. Moves in and out each day. If I sat on my money, I might just as well be stranded on a desert island for all the good 'twould do me. I couldn't eat it, couldn't wear it, couldn't use it. Money should never stagnate, but like ocean currents, circulate. Like the ocean currents can...
All right, that was part of a 20-minute whole episode. Back in 1967, TV apparently wanted to teach us stuff. Now it just wants to keep us quiet, right? So that was, I wasn't born in 1967, but I did see it, and it was like, oh, Scrooge McDuck, that's great, right? And I think he has some good points, right? Money is a tool. It should be used. If we just sit on it and hoard it, it doesn't really do anything. It's not accomplishing the purpose that it exists for, and yet, I think Scrooge McDuck kind of missed a few points, right? He didn't teach those kids, well, how much? I mean, he's got this is petty cash. He's got a whole vault full of gold. I mean, that's ridiculous. He didn't teach them anything practical that they could actually do day to day to live it out. So I think, cartoons are fun, but the Bible is where we should get most of our, guidance for life. So if we look at the Old Testament, right? The Old Testament is very black and white on how we deal with money, right? Earn as much as you can. In the Old Testament, wealth was viewed as a blessing from God. And as long as you tithed your 10%, gave it back to the temple, then you're good. All right? Deuteronomy 14, kind of the tithing chapter, verses 22 through 29 says this, be sure to set aside a tenth of all your fields that produce each year. At the end of the 3 years, bring all the tithes of that year's produce to store in the towns, so that the Levites who don't have an allotment or inheritance of their own, and for the foreigners, the fatherless, the widows, and those who live in the towns may come and eat and be satisfied. And so the Lord your God may bless you in all the works of your hands. And whereas I personally, I don't know if you're with me or not, I love black and white rules. I love to know that I'm within the boundaries, that I'm checking the boxes. The New Testament, when Jesus teaches on money, is significantly less clear. And I think that's where we start to get caught up, right? So Jesus is in the temple with his disciples, and he's watching a widow give some money. And in Mark 14, 41 through 44, it says this, Jesus sat down opposite to the place where the offerings were put and watched the crowd putting the money in the temple treasury. Many rich people threw in large amounts, but the poor widow came and put in 2 small copper coins, worth only a few cents. Calling his disciples to him, Jesus says, "Truly I tell you, this poor widow has put more in the treasury than all the others. They all gave out of their wealth, but she, out of her poverty, put in everything, all she had to live on." So whereas the Old Testament teaches us a very black and white view of giving, Jesus teaches us a sacrificial view. And yet, we know that money is hugely important. But since the New Testament puts us right smack dab in the gray area of life, we don't really know what to do, right? Jesus says in Matthew 6:21, "For where your treasure is, there your heart is also." So he sets a very high standard for how we deal with money, but he doesn't give the checkbox like we get in the Old Testament. A Wesleyan commentator, J.M. Walters, warns us. He says, "Putting your trust in riches rather than in God is a sure sign that true religion is far from you." So money is kind of a litmus test. It's kind of a litmus test on where our heart is, how we view people, how we view God, and yet it's relatively unclear on exactly how we can use money well. So what do we do? What do you do? Would you take a job? Have you taken a job based just on the paycheck alone? How do you determine how much you spend? How much you save? How do you determine how much you give? Luckily for us, that's exactly what James talks about as we start chapter 5 in our series, Resolved. So over the last handful of weeks, we've been looking at the book of James front to back, and we finally made it to the last chapter, James 5. And we're going to talk about the first 6 verses this week. So if you've missed any of these weeks, you can catch up on our, as Andrea said, our new and improved website, likekc.org. And we'd love to get you caught up. But the book of James is basically a book where James takes the teachings of Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount and the teachings of Solomon in Proverbs, and he mashes them together into 12 practical applications in how we can live out the way of Christ in our lives today. So we're going to have scripture on the screen if you want to follow along, if you got a Bible or a phone with a Bible app, or if you want to use the Bibles under the seats, we'd love for you to follow along. So let's dive in. James 5, verse 1 says this, "Now listen, you rich people." And I think we need to stop there. Because by show of hands, how many people feel rich right now? I saw, oh, nice. 2 people, 3 people, right? I think if we were talking about this the other day after the Valentine's Day thing we were cleaning up. I don't know why we were talking about being rich, but we were. And we collectively decided that just the gut feeling was you're rich when you purchase things without any concern for how much it costs. So if you go to buy a car and you're like, I want that one. How much does it cost? Doesn't matter. Do you want to negotiate? Why would I do that? Waste of time. Pay whatever they want me to pay, right? Go to Nebraska Furniture Mart and the people with the pads running around. You want to buy this? You want to buy this? You want to buy this? Yes, yes, and yes. Do you care how much they cost? No. I feel like, that's my definition. If I feel like I could live life like that, I would be rich. Unfortunately, ask Andrea, I'm not. I love coupons. I didn't buy eggs the other week at Sam's Club because I was used to paying $5 and now they're $8. And I'm like, breakfast is not worth an extra $3. It's not worth it. And she's like, we need eggs. And I'm like, fine, I just won't use them. They're now too expensive. Right? It's ridiculous, right? But from a worldly perspective, as you look up the numbers, I'm not sure that my definition is correct. According to givewhatyoucan.org and corroborated through a bunch of other sites, the median, so if you lined up the whole 300 million people in the United States, or however many there are, and you took the 150 millionth, took the middle person, the median income in the United States is $37,500. The median salary in the world, if you lined up all 7.5 billion, you took the middle person, adjusted for cost of living, so you can't say, well, things are cheaper, adjusted for cost of living is $3,400. The median cost of living. If you look from a global perspective to be in the top 1% income-wise in the world, and again, I didn't believe this when I saw it, so I looked it up on multiple websites, and they all agreed, to be in the top 1% yearly income in the world is only $65,000, which is shocking. So it's humbling to think of those numbers, right? I don't know what any of you make, but most of us probably make more than $3,400. You can think, well, okay, but wealth is more of a net worth thing, right? We think about the rich and the famous, and they're worth millions and billions and whatever. You know, Elon Musk is worth 400 billion now, or how much he's worth. That's rich, net worth. So you think net worth, right? Let's throw some numbers on the screen. According to Kiplinger.com, who does a bunch of studies on things, the average net worth of individuals based on age is on the screen. So if you sell everything you have and you have just a pile of money left over, look at your age bracket. According to me, I should be at $550,000, right? Right? So you look at, I got someone saying, so where are you? I'm not telling you, Jim. Talk to Andrea. If she wants to tell you, she can tell you. Right? But even when you look at retirement age, 65 to 75, $1.8 million. When I remember the AIG My Number commercials, right? You type it in there, you're like, I need like $3 to $5 million to retire. Because I was always like, I want to live huge. The fact is, people rarely, if ever, get there. There was a survey in 2024, the Modern Wealth Survey, where they surveyed a ton of people, and they said, how much do you need to be wealthy in the bank, net worth? And the universal number was $2.5 million. If you have a net worth of $2.5 million in the U.S., the opinion is that you're wealthy. And they said, how much would you be comfortable retiring with at age 67, which is the new retirement age? How much would you need to feel comfortable retiring? And the number was $778,000. Now, I don't know how you feel, but from a global perspective, I think we could all say that we're probably in that rich category that James is talking to. Even from a local perspective, right? Most of us are probably above the average. And no matter where you are on the rich, poor spectrum, I do think that James has some valuable things that we can learn about, because money does affect us all. So I want to read the entirety of this section, James 5, 1 through 6, and then we're going to break it down, because I think he teaches us three specific things that can benefit us. So James 5, 1 through 6 says this. It says, now listen, you rich people. Weep and wail because of the misery that's coming on you. That's great. Your wealth has rotted, and moths have eaten your clothes. Your gold and silver are corroded. The corrosion will testify against you and eat your flesh like fire. You have hoarded wealth in the last days. Look, the wages you failed to pay the workers who mowed your fields are crying out against you. The cries of the harvesters have reached the ears of the Lord Almighty. You have lived on earth in luxury and self-indulgence. You have fattened yourselves in the days of slaughter. You have condemned and murdered the innocent one who was not opposing you. That's some pretty strong language. And I think it gets broken down into three sections, right? James directly speaks to how we earn our money, that the how is important. He talks to how we save our money, how and how much is important. And then he talks about how we spend our money. How we spend our money is important. So let's start with earn. James 5:4, he talks about how we earn our money. Look, the wages you failed to pay your workers who mowed your fields are crying out against you. The cries of the harvesters have reached the ears of the Lord Almighty. Now, back in the day when James was writing this, society worked where there was landowners and there was day laborers. And the landowners had all the land, and the day laborers worked the land. And the landowners would hire the day laborers to work the land, and they'd pay them every day, right? Jesus tells different parables about this, where the day laborers get paid every day. And they would literally live paycheck to paycheck, day by day, where the money that they got went to directly put food on their table to provide for the needs for their family. So if, as James described, the landowners didn't pay their workers, they literally took the food off their tables. They literally deprived their family of what they needed to survive. What James is calling us to is the disparity between maximizing your personal income by cutting corners, not paying people what you should, trying to get a deal, and caring for the people around you. And James is calling us to consider, to struggle with what should my income be, to how do I care for people. Now, I personally haven't deprived anybody that I know of their needs, but I think I have fallen in this category. I've taken jobs 100% because of the paycheck. You guys all know that before I moved to Kansas, I was in sales, and I never wanted to be in sales, right? Never did I want to be in sales. I was in operations. I loved operations. I would set up systems. My job was to help other people do their jobs more efficiently, so as the operations leader, I would help people create systems and processes and help people make their lives easier and better and more productive. And I loved watching people succeed in roles that they were struggling in because of the systems we could put in place, and I loved it. And then when they voluntold me into being in sales, I was like, I don't want any part of that. Sales is super high stress. There's an expectation you work around the clock. If literally anything goes wrong at the end of the day at the balance sheet, it's your fault because you didn't sell it for enough. Even if something went out of whack, way out of your control, like you're to blame for everything. You get constant blame, and yet you're 100% responsible for everything. As a sales leader, I saw myself as 100% responsible for me and my team selling enough stuff to keep 150 people employed. That if we didn't sell enough, people would literally lose their jobs. And it was a ton of pressure. That I'd work all kinds of hours and work super hard to hit budgets and goals and everything, because I knew the first conversation is if we don't sell enough, people are the first thing to go. Because you can't just pay less rent, but you can pay less people. So the pressure was huge. And yet, I still accepted the job. I accepted the job because partly I felt pressured into it, like I said, but honestly, the larger paycheck sounded pretty good. Sales makes about 50% more than operations. That sounded pretty good. But even after the job was unlivable, right? When the stress was crazy, when life was just miserable, when it was affecting my family, my health, my sanity, I still stayed in it. Because I kept comparing it to other jobs that I could get and saying, well, what's the delta on my sanity? How much is my sanity worth? All right? And I stayed in the job because I was like, I guess my sanity is worth that much. We'll just be okay with that. So I did something I hated because of the paycheck. I was maximizing my income at the expense of myself and the people around me. I don't think I deprived anybody of their livelihoods, but I was probably just as guilty as the landowners in James 5:4. And yet James reminds us here that the way that we make money is important. We need to check our motivation. So I ask you, what have you done to maximize the money that you make? Have you taken second and third jobs you probably didn't need because you could just make a little extra money? Have you done something that you have the skills for, but that you don't feel called to, just because it paid more? Have you chased a promotion, even though you love the job that you do and you're great at the job you're at, only because it pays more? What have you done just to earn more money? I think the second topic James calls us to think about is how we save our money. James 5:3 says this, you have hoarded wealth in the last days. Now this is where I think James speaks to me directly, because you can ask Andrea. I am a natural saver. I love saving, and I absolutely hate spending in any kind, way, shape, or form. Anybody with me on the, I just hate. Good. I don't know, I just hate it. I don't know if I have a deep-seated, unaddressed fear of catastrophe that like, I'm like, I need that rainy day fund. You never know when like, I'm in Kansas now, a tornado could come through. I need a whole house's worth of money sitting around. Like who knows? Like, that's ridiculous and not true, but like, who knows? And don't get me wrong, like savings is important, right? We get told lots of different views on how to save, right? The Christian financial guy, Dave Ramsey, right? Financial Peace University. He gives you a checklist. He says, you need to save 6 months of your expenses in an account as a rainy day fund. Then you need to pay off all of your debt because all debt's bad. Don't even have a credit card. The 1 month of debt will kill you. I don't know if that's true. He says, then you need to like give 10% pre-tax, of course, to your church in a tithe. And then you need to save 15% of your income, put it in your 401k for retirement. And after all those boxes are checked, save as much as you can. And I don't know if you've ever listened to the podcast that he's got, but he's got a $1 million Scream segment where people call in and they're like, I finally got to $1 million. And he's like, all right, have at it. And they're like, wah! And they're going crazy. And I'm like, originally I thought, I'm like, he's celebrating milestones, good for him. Until I heard one of them. Somebody called in, and he's like, hey, I'm calling in from $1 million Scream. And Dave Ramsey's like, way to go, buddy. Tell me your story. He's like, I'm a janitor. And he's like, oh my goodness, good for you. He's like, I just saved $1 million. Great, how old are you? I'm 60-some years old. Oh, wow, all right. How did you get to $1 million? This will be great for people to hear. He says, well, I did everything you told me to do. I've never purchased a new car. I've never gone on vacation. I go out to eat as little as possible. He's like, I don't spend barely anything, and I just put everything away in the bank. And I was at this point thinking, I sure hope that Dave Ramsey grieves the loss of like this guy's whole life. Like he gave away, he didn't spend anything on relationships to go to dinner with people. He like never traveled anywhere and experienced things. Like, I don't know the whole guy's whole story, but like I was just like, oh gosh, like you traded your life for a bank account. And the next thing that Dave Ramsey said was, this is the American dream, way to go. We should all be like you, bud. And I was like, I never listened to Dave Ramsey again. I just stopped. I was like, I can't do this. Like, whereas a lot of what he says is good, right? Like, don't have debt, that's good. Tithe, that's good. Save for retirement, that's good. Is 15% the right number? I don't know, but it's a number, right? Like, so a lot of what he says is good. It speaks directly what James says. You have hoarded wealth. This poor guy hoarded his money, and now he can't even use it. Like, we do need standards, but we shouldn't be celebrating the size of our bank accounts. Like you look at like somebody else, right? Like Fidelity, right? Their website's literally 401k.com. Which, like, how they got that one, I don't know, but good for them. Right? Like, they're the save your money people. So they have this graph that they put out, and they say, this is how you should save for retirement. Have 1 times your yearly salary by 30, 2 by 35, 3 by 40, all the way to, once you get 10 times your yearly salary at 67, quit your job and enjoy life. All right? So if you make... So if you make your $37,500, when you get to $375,000 at 67, boom, quit, and you're good. But the underlying assumption in Fidelity is that the goal to life is retirement. That we're working our entire life to save so that we can afford to do nothing. Right? Again, I'm not sure that this lines up with what James is saying. Like, and I'm not saying everybody does nothing in retirement, but, right, have enough money so you don't need to work anymore. I think God is calling us to more than working our entire life just to do nothing with it. No matter what your view is on savings, right, I think it can be said that the level of our savings does speak a lot to where our heart is. Do we view our level of savings as security? That I need enough in the bank so that if anything happens, I'm covered? And at that point, we're putting our security in money. Or do we live our life where we put our security and trust in God and his provision? Dave Ramsey, Fidelity, wants us to put our security in money. We need enough in the bank so if anything happens, we're covered. Our 6 months of expenses, our whatever X your years of life are. Jesus addresses this in the Sermon on the Mount, right? Matthew 6:19-21 says this, do not store up for yourself treasures in heaven. Or, not, that's not right. Don't listen to that at all. So Willy Wonka moment, strike that and reverse it. Do not store up for yourself treasures on earth where moth and vermin destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven where moths and vermin do not destroy and where thieves do not break in and steal, for where your treasure is, there your heart is also. See, that's the longer version of the verse we read earlier. Jesus is pretty clear the goal should not be how much we're saving, but it should be on how we're spending. See, and that's like a great segue to James's next point. Because it shouldn't be how you need to save something, but the focus should not be on hitting a certain number or getting to the point where you can do nothing. It should be on how are you spending what you have, right? The third topic that James addresses is exactly that, how we spend. And James 5 and 6 says this, you have lived on earth in luxury and self-indulgence. You have fattened yourself in the days of slaughter, and you have condemned and murdered the innocent one who was not opposing you. So I ask all of us, how should we spend the money that we make? What standard of living is acceptable, right? That's the how much question that we asked at the beginning. How much do we buy? How much do we need? What standard of living is God honoring? How much do we spend on ourselves versus how much do we give to others? And going back to the original question, just how much is enough? And how do we know when we've gone to the too much category? So I find some wisdom from a pastor in California, Rick Warren. He did a whole sermon series on this verse, and he broke it down, and he basically said this. It was called the Wealth series, and he said, to build treasure in heaven, there are 5 funds that you can invest in. And I just like the picture of investment funds. So he says there's the growth fund, where that's any money that you spend to grow your character. Any class that you take, any conference you attend, anything that you do to improve yourself and to improve your ability to serve God in the kingdom is money well spent. He says there's a mutual fund. Any money that you spend to build relationships. When you invite your neighbor over, when you take somebody to church on the promise that you'll pay for lunch afterwards, right? Any money that you spend to build a relationship with somebody is money well spent. He said there's a service fund. Any money you spent to help people in need, right? The money that you spend for gas for your car, for helping somebody move, or the money that you spend on a meal, or the money that you spend to help somebody fix their car, or to get a new couch if there's broke, or whatever you do, the money you spend to help other people is money well spent. They say the global fund, money spent to bring people to God. Maybe this is money you invest in a nonprofit who's doing global missions work, or a missionary that you personally know, or going on a missions trip yourself, but the money you spend to bring people to God, or maybe it's local. The money you spend to invest in people who are far from God that you can personally bring to God. And then there's the treasury fund, right? The money spent worshiping God through your tithe, through investing in the church, God's chosen vehicle for spreading the word about his son. And I like this picture of how do we spend our money? Are we spending it in these 5 categories, or are we, as James says, living in luxury and self-indulgence? And don't get me wrong, it's still not black and white. And I think the whole point is that it's not black and white. And I think part of the struggle is okay. I think God enjoys the struggle when we're struggling to align our lives with his will, right? Andre and I struggled with what kind of house to buy when we moved down here, right? We lived in a big house in Michigan. on the lake, and we struggled buying that because it was like, is this what we need? Is this too much? Is this, right? Houses are an appreciating asset, so it's not like, you can always justify it that way. But from the fund perspective, Andrea and I set some marriage goals, and we said we want to be the hub for where people want to be and what people want to do. We want to use what we have to help other people. So Andrea coaches the running groups for Team World Vision. She did in Michigan, and I coached the triathlon groups, and we picked a house on the lake right next to a big state trail that was 100 and some miles long. So people could meet at our house. We could go for runs together. The main reason people didn't do triathlons was because they were afraid of dying in the water, right? So it's like, hey, we live on a lake. There's no boats. We have a safety kayak. I'll go with you. We'll teach you to swim. And we wanted to give people the experiences that they may never have, right? Help them overcome their fears. We wanted the kids to have a place where they felt like their friends could come over and that the friends would want to come over, and we could be like the hub for their little friends. We wanted to have a house big enough so we could host and have people over and host family gatherings and friends over and all that stuff. And we said, well, this seems like we can justify this. So we did. And we moved down here. We felt the same way. We wanted to have a house where our kids could invite their friends over to, where we could host people, where we could be the place. We're not going to, you can swim in the pool, I guess, but you're probably not going to get much training done, right? And a lot of you have come over to our house, and maybe you're like, buddy, your kids do not need their own bedroom. And maybe they don't. I don't know. You don't need a pool table in the basement. Maybe I don't. But we enjoyed having you guys over for the football party. We enjoyed having some of you over for dinner here and there. And we want to continue that. And once we figure out how to turn the pool on, and once the temperature gets positive, I'm taking a lot of flack for this temperature. We want to have you guys over and have all kinds of people over, right? And we want to use it to help other people. And maybe that's right, maybe that's wrong, right? But we're living in the gray. And I think that's what God wants. He wants us to struggle. How do we align the way that we earn, the way that we live, the way that we spend, the way that we save? How do we align our actions with God's will? Jesus affirms this in the parable of the sheep and the goats, right? And we're not going to read it because it's long, but this is where Jesus says, the end time, I'm going to come. Everybody's going to be separated, sheep, goats. He's going to look at the sheep and he's going to say, come, you who are blessed by my Father, take your inheritance. The kingdom was prepared for you since the creation of the world. For when I was hungry, you gave me something to eat. When I was thirsty, you gave me something to drink. When I was a stranger, you invited me in. When I needed clothes, you clothed me. And when I was sick, you looked after me. When I was in prison, you came to visit me. And they're going to say, I didn't do anything of that for you. And Jesus says, whatever you did for the least of these, you did for me. And then he looks at the ones in the go category. And they said, well, we didn't not do anything. And he's like, that's right, you did nothing. What you didn't do for the least of these, you also didn't do for God. And I think that's just so convicting. Like, what are we doing for the hurting in our world? Are we earning with the purpose of using it as the tool that it is? Are we saving with the idea of keeping our trust in God? Save enough so that, yeah, okay, an emergency fund is great. Retirement is still probably something you want to save for. But are we crossing that somewhere in their gray line of hoarding? And are we spending on things that honor the kingdom? What's really humbling is that when you look at giving in the United States, like the numbers across the board match, but I took mine from philanthropyroundtable.org. Giving decreases with income. So the more you have, proportionally the less people in the United States tend to give. And even if you go by the black and white standard of the Old Testament, only people that make less than $25,000 on average meet it. The thing is, the more we have, the more we tend to put security in the money and less on God, and the more we tend to hoard. And it's been this way since I've ever looked at the numbers. The standard number that people say is the average church goer gives 2.5% to, not the church, like anything, if you look at their W-2s, right? So if you look at the Old Testament, it says 10%. If you look at the New Testament, it says give sacrificially. If you look at our bank accounts, it looks like most of us are not meeting either. So I want to end with some questions. If I were to get a copy of your bank records, what would I see? What do you spend your money on? Do you spend on your wants and your desires? Do you spend on others, helping guide them toward a relationship with Christ? Or if I'm honest, probably like me, is it a mix of both? How is God calling you to earn, to save, and to spend your resources that you have? And what is God calling you to do differently this week than you have been doing? See, we're stewards of our resources. They're not ours. The time that we get, the talents that God gives us, and the treasure that God blesses us with are God's. And our responsibility is to steward them well. James makes it very clear that there's a right and a wrong way to handle these resources. Jesus is even more direct, saying that the way that we handle these resources reflect the state of our heart. Money is a key indicator of the spiritual health and a direct reflection of the state of our heart. So I want to end with a quote. I don't know if many of you know this, probably maybe all of you do, maybe none of you. The Light KC is a Wesleyan church, right? Church denominations were Wesleyan, right? Wesleyan church was started, shockingly enough, by a guy, John Wesley, right? It was not started to be a new denomination. John Wesley wanted to reform the Anglican church in England, right? So he advocated for reforms in the church. He thought that the church was falling outside of where God wanted them to be, and he wanted to call them to something better, so he started to reform it. And eventually that led to a new denomination being birthed, the Methodists that eventually became the Wesleyans. And John Wesley was credited in one of his sermons with a quote. He says, "Earn all you can, save all you can, give all you can." And that sounds like a great bumper sticker. It's actually a paraphrase version of the actual quote. The actual quote is this: "Give all you can without hurting your soul, your body, or your neighbor. Save all you can, cutting off every needless expense. And give all you can. Be glad to give, ready to distribute, laying up in store for yourselves a good foundation against the time to come, that you may attain eternal life." Now, I'm no John Wesley, and I always try to think of like one sentence to summarize the sermon, and I can't think of anything better than that. This week, James is calling us to resolve, to evaluate how we acquire money, how we rank money in our hearts, and how we use the money that we have. So let's resolve this week to do a lot of praying, to seek the Holy Spirit's guidance so that we can follow John Wesley's lead and give all we can, save all we can, and give all we can. Will you join me in prayer? God, of all the topics that you choose to talk about in the Bible, money is probably one of the hardest because it's so personal. As you said, money reflects the state of our heart. I pray this week that you convict us in new ways on how we save, and how we earn, and how we spend money. Help us not to put our confidence in worldly wealth, on a certain number on a bank account sheet, but in you and in your provision. Help us not just spend on ourselves, living in luxury, but help us to use the money, to invest it as the tool you intended to be, to build your kingdom and to bring those far from you into a relationship with your Son. Help us to live with open hands. so that whenever you call us to give our time, our talents, or our treasure, we are ready to release it into your service. I pray that together, as a church, we can reflect your heart for the poor and the hurting of this world through the way that we use all the resources that you entrust into our stewardship. We thank you. In your name we pray. Amen. Now, as we did for a while, and as I have not done for the last couple of weeks, we want to open the front up during the last song as an altar. If there's anything on your heart that you want prayer for, please come up. The front is open. If you feel a hand on your back, it just means that somebody's praying with you. Don't be surprised, but we do want to open the front up as an altar during this last song.
Life up from the dead. Oh, praise the one
1 Timothy 6:17-19 says this, "Command those who are rich in the present world not to be arrogant, nor put their hope in wealth, which is so uncertain, but to put their hope in God, who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. Command them to do good, to be rich in good deeds, and to be generous and willing to share. In this way, they will lay up treasures for themselves as a firm foundation for the coming age, so that they may take hold of the life that is truly life." This week, let's evaluate how we earn money, how we save money, and how we spend the money that we have. Let's collectively seek the Holy Spirit's guidance on the next steps that He wants us to take individually and as a congregation to steward the resources that God has blessed us with, to honor Him and to build His kingdom. Again, some quick reminders. Tonight at 5 o'clock, we do have the town hall. I hope to see absolutely everyone there. We'd like to share, based on all the conversations that I had with many of you over the fall, kind of some of the things that we're putting in place already. But we also want to seek your feedback and some of your thoughts on what God's putting on your heart for things to do for 2025. Also, we want to remind you there's a sign up out there. Apache asked if we have any people that have some time during the day to help go in and mentor kids, to read with them, to help them with math, to be an MVP. That's what they call them. So if you guys have time during the day, we'd love to get a handful of people, more, that could just go into the schools, be a light to those kids, help them succeed in life. We'd like to thank our high schoolers and our band. It's so great to see the young people step up and take some ownership in the church, and it's just so great to hear them use their gifts to build the kingdom. And again, if you're new, if you want to stop by the info desk, we'd love to just get to know you, to say hi, to give you a little gift. See Andrea, see myself, we'd love to say hi. Heard somebody say hi. I hope to see all of you tonight. Go in peace. You are dismissed.